No. Okay, and we're live. Okay, we will just. Okay, let me see if anyone is watching at this point in time.
Quite difficult to get people to watch at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night.
That is true. But we have 10 people watching now, so I think we can start. All right.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. My name is Faith, and thank you so much for joining us here today. I Belong Here is an initiative by a group of students of the Taylor's University Law School under our Community Service Initiative module. In searching for a cause to support, the team really wanted to raise awareness on a difficult issue that is deeply entrenched in the shortcomings of the law and which affects the lives of many families and individuals in Malaysia. So today I am joined by Dr. Tamara Joan Durai Singham, I hope I pronounced the name right, who was our lecturer for constitutional and administrative law back in our, I think, first or second year. Yeah, but besides that, like Dr. Tamara is a senior lecturer at Taylor's Law School, and she is also the program director for the PhD in Law program. So she is more than qualified to join us and talk about the issue of statelessness here, because that's also her area of research. Yeah. So
Right,
yeah, we will also be joined by. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Dr. T, would you like to also maybe like add some remarks about yourself and who you are?
Well, I think you've covered it quite well, Faith. But I have been, maybe I can tell you a bit about myself in terms of my area of research, right? It's stateless as well as refugees, right? Rights of refugees in Malaysia. That's my area of research. And I've been in Taylor's now for 7 years. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm very happy. Yeah, happy at Taylor's and enjoy the research and the teaching that I do, and enjoy having students like Faith in my class.
Oh no. You're too kind. You are too kind.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say actually. Nothing more to add about myself. Yeah, that's about it.
All right. Yeah, we'll definitely find out more about you as the session progresses.
Yep.
All right. We will also be joined later by Miss Mashita, whom we have the honor of being connected with by Family Frontiers, which is a Malaysian NGO whose work centers around gender inequality. Miss Mashita is a mother and a teacher from Sabah whose life was impacted by statelessness. And she will be sharing her story through a video which she has kindly sent to us, and we will be broadcasting later during the session. So today we will be talking about what statelessness is and how exactly it impacts the lives of those who face this very real issue. We will spend the next hour or so just to hear Dr. Tamara and Miss Mashita about their perspectives. And towards the end, we'll have a little Q&A session where we'll open up questions to the floor, just to expand a little bit on anything that maybe wasn't quite covered, or to delve deeper into anything that the audience might be interested in. So now let's open up with our very first question. Dr. Tamara, I think the best way to begin is by discussing what is statelessness.
Right. So this concept of statelessness, Faith, and everyone who's listening in, thank you for inviting me, first of all. It's such a joy to be able to speak about this area, right? Because it's not very heavily spoken of or debated on. So it's a good, this is a good platform, right? For all of us to get to know a little bit more on statelessness. And basically statelessness, that whole concept of a stateless person is one that is coined by international law. It's not a local domestic legal concept. It's an international law concept that states incorporate into their local laws if they're party to that international obligation, right? So the word stateless itself, okay, the meaning of statelessness is basically one who is not a national of any state under the operation of the laws of the land, okay? So the person does not have citizenship in any state. The law of the land does not provide for that person to have citizenship. So that's basically what statelessness means. And this is provided for us in the Stateless Persons Convention of 1954. So it was only after World War II, actually even before that there was, But it's just after World War II that there was a realization that there had to be some kind of international law that caters for this group of people who don't have a state to live in, who cannot call any state their own, right? And one of the reasons for this, of course, you would have realized, you would know, would be for the Jews during World War II, after World War II. They were refugees. And also before that, Armenian refugees. There were so many refugees that came about by virtue of World War II, right? And a lot of them eventually became stateless because they had no country that was willing to accept them, right? So that is the concept of statelessness, basically. And in Malaysia, we don't define statelessness in our laws. We don't have laws that define statelessness as such. But what we do have is, of course, the immigration laws that speak of either whether you're a legal or illegal immigrant in this country. So our categorization doesn't necessarily include stateless persons in terms of the statutes or the legislation in the country. Okay, so it's an international law concept, but we do use it quite openly within the domestic circles as well. We do use it in Malaysia, this term statelessness. Yeah.
Right. Wow, that's so interesting. So statelessness is not really like we adopted it from international law.
Yes, it's a term, because if you look at the term statelessness, basically, there are two ways of looking at it. One is a stateless person, which is something that was coined by international law. And the other is a state of statelessness, a state of anarchy, you know? Mm-hmm. So people might get confused because when you talk about statelessness, you might think it's about a situation of anarchy in a country. That's another way of looking at it. But here we are looking specifically at the person who does not have citizenship. And in domestic law, in Malaysia, we call it citizenship. In international law, the term used is usually nationality. That's why we say a person without nationality. That's how the international law seems to coin it, rather than use the term citizenship. Yeah. But it means the same thing, not having a citizenship. Yeah.
I see. Understand. All right. Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, we can. I think we can move. Yay. We can move on to our second question, and that will be so from a legal perspective, why does statelessness occur? I guess in like internationally and in Malaysia as well.
Right. So yeah, there are various reasons for it, and most of the time, actually it depends. Sometimes it's just got to do with evidences. The person doesn't have proof that the person was born in his or her country, or the person's parents were from that country. So sometimes it's just a matter of lack of evidence. But sometimes the laws of the country does not allow or does not include a particular category of persons as citizens of the country. So for example, if you want to look at it in terms of Southeast Asia, the Rohingya, as you know, are refugees. And, you have Rohingya community in Malaysia. They are not only refugees, they are also stateless, right? Why are they stateless? It's because they don't have citizenship of Myanmar. The law does not provide for citizenship for them in Myanmar, right? So that's why they are stateless. So either the law itself of the country does not include you, right? That's one way you become stateless. Another could be there could be conflict of law in terms of nationality law. So, for example, you have a child who's born in a country that practices jus sanguinis, nationality by descent of the parents, by descent, by the parents' nationality. But you could have parents who are born in a country that practices jus soli. So you see, you have a conflict in terms of the laws. Sometimes the conflict in terms of the law can also lead to statelessness. Now, in Malaysia, especially in Sabah, the main issue really on statelessness would be irregular movements of people, right? Irregular movement of people. So people come in to work in this country, sometimes overstay, have families here, the children's births are not registered, and then that can lead to statelessness. Okay,
Right.
so that is one of the things that happens in Malaysia as well. Due to irregular movement, there is the risk that the children born in the country may be stateless. Okay, and if the children grow up in the country, work in the country, live and marry here, that makes them clearly stateless. They have children from their own irregular situation. They have children. That makes it very difficult for those children to get citizenship. So, generations on, you might have statelessness arising. And this happens in Malaysia because there's a lot of movement of people within our states, right? A lot of movement from Philippines and Indonesia into Sabah. A lot of movement between Indonesia and Peninsular Malaysia as well. So these issues can arise. Yeah. So irregular movement as well. Yeah, those are the main ones. Okay. Either the law of the land does not include you, or there's a conflict in the law, or there is irregular movement of persons that, causes there to be a risk of statelessness for the child that is born because of this irregular movement. And then you also have situations of, like I said, evidence, lack of documentation. Lack of documentation can also lead to statelessness if one is not careful. Okay, so these are the various legal sort of, the legal reasons or underpinnings for statelessness, especially in Malaysia. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Right. So, I've done like a little bit of research on like statelessness, like on my own, and I've heard of like stories floating around of individuals who are stateless, maybe because their father is because like they have a foreign mother, or statelessness because of adoption. Do you
Yes.
like know about that? Is there anything like you
Yes.
might be able to expand further on that?
Yeah, because you can have mixed marriages, mixed one national and the other party is a non-national. That can cause statelessness to arise, especially if the father is Malaysian and the mother is a foreigner, but the marriage is not registered. So if there is no registration of marriage, no marriage certificate, then the child would be illegitimate, right? So in cases like that in Malaysia, the child will follow the citizenship of the mother. So if the couple is estranged, right, from each other, they don't plan to get married, then the child will follow the citizenship of the mother. But the trouble is, what if the child is not with the mother and with the father in Malaysia? So this is where this issue of statelessness can arise, right, in terms of legitimacy. Also, in cases of adoption, because if you look at Article 14 of the Federal Constitution, you get citizenship by descent, but by descent of from your parents, and it doesn't include adoptive parents. Unfortunately, it's been interpreted to mean biological parents.
Right.
So if there was no proper sort of procedure in terms of the adoption, if the adoption didn't go through in the proper procedural manner, then issues can arise. So there have been a lot of cases in Malaysia in the past where parents would not have realized that the method of adopting the child was actually one that could render the child stateless, right? A lot of people could have bought babies, just adopted just like that, taken over a child. Things happen out of your own love for the child and goodwill, but it can be problematic legally because the proper adoption process was not complied with. So then the child has the risk of being stateless as well. Yes.
Right.
So we've had past, like, for example, certain maybe clinics, maybe certain places that were branded as, places where there were a lot of cases of baby selling, say.
Right.
Things like that. Then if the child is born in that particular clinic and, the officers are aware of the fact that the child was born there, and then when the child tries to get IC, that can be an issue, because what if the child doesn't look like the parents? Then that gives room for investigation to find out whether real child was properly adopted or illegally adopted.
Right.
So if
I've
there's
seen that happen before, actually. It's very unfortunate.
Very,
Yeah.
very unfortunate because, people are not aware. It's not that they want to break the law.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just a lack of awareness of how these things can actually go wrong, right? So,
Yeah.
so this is how it is. So, yeah. So these are the situations in Malaysia because the law itself does not provide, right, for jus soli. Ideally, like in America, jus soli, you're born there, you get nationality. It's so
Right.
easy, right? But we don't practice that. We practice jus sanguinis, so it becomes more. The scrutiny is on the parents' descent, right? The parents
Mm.
themselves, whether they are nationals. Yeah. So yeah, that can be an issue.
Right, I see. Thank you for that. That's very helpful to understand. Like, I guess how statelessness might play out in real life. We
Yep.
have another question. Do our laws provide for any fallback if like documentation cannot be proven?
At the moment, well, the matter can be taken to court, of course. The final recourse would be taking the matter to court, and there is possibility of registration of children. There is a special process,
Mm.
registration. So you don't get nationality by operation of law as such. It's not automatic, but it's by way of registration, and this is under Article 15A of the Federal Constitution. So there is a provision, special circumstances, perhaps the child could be registered. And our
Right.
courts have been quite generous in the past in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. Has interpreted, has it has been used. Article 15A has been used. So this is something that a child can hope for as well. So there are avenues. Not all avenues have been utilized effectively, though. For example, there's also the avenue under Section 1, Clause E, 1, Para E of Part 2 of the second schedule of the Federal Constitution that says that every person born within the Federation who is not born a citizen of any country otherwise than by virtue of the paragraph, not born a citizen of any other country, is entitled to Malaysian citizenship. So if you're born in this country and there is no likelihood that you have any citizenship from any other country, there is a provision that says you can get Malaysian citizenship.
Right.
Unfortunately, the provision has not been really used as
Mm.
such. So there are laws. The Constitution does provide mechanisms for children, especially, to gain citizenship in Malaysia. There is that provision. It's just that it's not been utilized so effectively,
Mm-hmm.
yet. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, okay. I didn't know that actually. I didn't know that there are avenues in the law actually that provides for that. Thank you for that. All right. I think we can move on to our next question. So that will be could you tell us what sections of the community are vulnerable to statelessness both in Peninsular Malaysia and Sabah?
Okay. So all around, right, when you look at it, of course, you can have ad hoc cases like statelessness, like I said earlier on, the
Mm-hmm.
adoptive, children who are adopted, illegitimate children. There are cases that, are ad hoc. Those are ad hoc cases. However, you find that sometimes when you look at communities as a whole, there are certain communities that are more vulnerable to statelessness than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are some communities that already are stateless, right? Like refugee
Right.
community that is also stateless, like the Rohingya community,
Right.
okay? And then there are some communities that are at risk of being stateless, okay?
Oh.
So some examples of this would be, like I said, the migrant communities in the country. They have citizenship of another country, but when they get married in this country and when they have children in this country and the children's births are not registered, say, then there is a risk that the children will be stateless. Okay? So you have this issue arising in Sabah and also in Peninsular Malaysia, in Sarawak to a certain extent, where children are born from migrant parents and their births are not registered. So then it becomes a bit of a problem. There is a risk of statelessness. You also have indigenous communities living in remote areas, right? In Sabah, for example, you have indigenous communities that, well, they are, of course, they've been here from time immemorial. They deserve citizenship of this country. They are citizens of this country. But the thing is, the citizenship, even though it's automatic, it's not really automatic. You need the evidences also. You need the birth certificate to show that you're a citizen. And if things go awry, nobody bothered to get birth certificate for the child, and then the child does not marry a local, the child marries a foreigner, it gets more and more complicated. And these things happen,
Right.
So then you have the fear of statelessness also,
Right.
of a child who would have had a parent who is actually indigenous. That's ironic. Huh? If you're indigenous, you think, what deal? Definitely you're Malaysian. But no, it happened because the child does not have the documentation. Okay?
Right.
So the risk of statelessness exists unless somebody actively does something about it. So for example, in Peninsular Malaysia, if you look at the Orang Asli community of Peninsular Malaysia, you have the Jabatan Kemajuan, right? You have their department that sees to their welfare. So one of the things that the department also does is to make sure that they have their births registered when the babies are born. So that's the job of the department. But then you can have some indigenous communities that don't have a department seeing to their needs, right?
Right.
So then there might be families and children that fall through the gaps, right? And do not have documents, and therefore very difficult to prove citizenship. Okay?
Right.
So you have indigenous communities that may be vulnerable to statelessness. You have got migrant communities that are vulnerable to statelessness. You have certain refugee communities as well in Malaysia who are vulnerable to statelessness as well. So you have, and also you have, of course, the ad hoc cases of adoption and illegitimate children who do not have their documents in place as well, right? So you have those issues arising as well. Yeah.
I see. It seems like a lot of issues relating to statelessness sort of stem from like a lack of registering something. Is it as easy as that? Is it?
Because for citizenship, first thing is you need a birth certificate, right? Every person has to have legal status in the country. You need to have a birth certificate, right? That's proof of your status in the country. Okay.
Right.
And then in order to confirm your citizenship, you need to have an IC, right? So all children can have their births registered. That's not a problem in this country. Whether you are legal or illegal in this country, you can have your births registered.
Right.
The problem arises when it comes to getting an IC, an identity card. That's only for the citizen of Malaysia, right?
Right.
And at that point of time, sometimes you have problems whereby, the children actually are from mixed parentage, and therefore perhaps they're not entitled to the IC, right? It's at that point of time when they realize that, okay, the child, is not entitled to an IC and therefore is not a Malaysian citizen. But even before that, with a birth certificate, at this point of time, your birth certificate either says you are local or you're foreign. There are different types of birth certificates for children who are not local, not Malaysian, right? They have a different type of birth certificate, and the Malaysian children have a different type of birth certificate. So when you have a birth certificate that is for a foreign person, foreign child, then a lot of the rights that are meant to be for citizens, of course, are lost on that child. So things like education, for example, if you have a different colored birth certificate, you might not be able to, you cannot go to public schools, for example. So these are the things when it comes to these vulnerable communities, right? There is if they don't have the documents, then everything else becomes harder for them. But it's not completely, they're not completely damned, if you like to say, It's not like it's the end all of things, because registration can take place later. It's possible to register births later. It's just that it takes a lot more work. It's a little bit more documentation that's involved. But yeah, it's possible to do that later as well. So just because you don't have a birth certificate now doesn't mean that you can't have a birth certificate later. But it's just that it has to be proven that you were born in this country, that sort of thing. So that part is the part which is tricky, right? The proof, evidences of your link to this country. Okay, so
Right.
yes, documentation is important. Actually, the birth certificate is very important. But it's not like as if you don't have a birth certificate now, you can't do anything about it. It's not that. You can. It's just that it takes a lot of time and effort. It's not so easy to do. Yeah.
Understand. I see. I see. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Um, I think you mentioned a little bit about the impacts of statelessness, and that is actually our next question. So I think we can go ahead and address that. So we understand that that you've done some research on the impacts of statelessness. Maybe you could share with us like what your findings have been for that.
Okay. So if the person is stateless, then the person doesn't have legal status, right? Doesn't have legal status in the country. And if the person does not have legal status, then it's like the person does not exist. And that is very wrong. It shouldn't be that
Yeah.
way. Every human being exists, right? So at least a birth certificate does help, because at least it shows of that existence, that legal status. And when a person has a birth certificate, at least then you know that what the person's age is, where the person is from, who the parents are. Sometimes at least that information is there, right? So even if the child does not have citizenship, but has a birth certificate of some sort, doesn't have a clear citizenship yet, but has a birth certificate, at least there's some kind of legal status. But that may not be good enough, because at the end of the day, if you are stateless in a country, and in Malaysia, basically, you are obviously not treated like a citizen, right? There are different rules. The Constitution, the federal Constitution, provides for certain rights. Most of the rights are for citizens. Okay,
Right.
so you may not have the right to education, for example, is not something that may be available. Public education may not be available if you don't have citizenship in this country. If you're stateless, right? If you're stateless. Apart from that, it might be quite difficult to get healthcare as well. Huh? It's available to children, healthcare for all children. It's available to all children, but there is the fear that if you go to a hospital, a governmental hospital for treatment, first of all, the charges will be higher because you're not local.
Correct.
And number two is, if you are with illegal, you're illegal, you're without documents, say, then there is also the fear that you could be arrested and detained at some point because
Right.
you're illegal, right? So that's surety that you can get proper treatment, proper healthcare in a hospital is not really there for a stateless person. There are fears attached to it, right? So that right to healthcare is also maybe not available. You have to resort to going into the private clinics, perhaps. Private clinics do not scrutinize documentation as much, right? So you have this disparity there. And then also whatever other social rights that a citizen would have, any kind of bantuan, any kind of help. Obviously, if you're stateless, you're not entitled to any help from the government, any kind of incentives that the government is giving. Obviously, you don't have that. So those, you are basically not given any of the rights that a national would have in the country, or even a foreign person, a foreigner in the country also would have, right? You would have lesser than that. So that is the issue that arises here. So there have been cases in international law that tells you that your nationality is your right to rights. It's the most important thing. This right to a citizenship is the most important because it's the gateway to all your other rights. If you don't have the citizenship, you may not have all the other rights, especially in countries that are not party to the international human rights conventions.
Right.
Because when you are party to the international human rights conventions, like the Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, or the International Covenant on, civil and political rights, if the state is not party to that, then the individual in the state is not protected, right, from it within that domain. It's not protected in that sense. So then it becomes very difficult for the person. But if the person, say, lives in, say, the UK, for example, UK is party to the European Convention on Human Rights. So even if you are not a citizen, it doesn't matter. You are still protected by that international or regional law. You see?
Right.
So that is also the sort of like the hang up. If you're stateless in a country that has not subscribed to these treaties, then the country is not, they don't have an obligation
Right.
to
Right.
provide all these facilities for a stateless person.
I see. Right, that's quite unfortunate. Yeah, Malaysia has still quite a few conventions that we've yet to become a party to. uh,
That's right.
yeah,
We are getting there, though. We are getting there.
we are getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a follow up question. I think to a state to what you mentioned earlier, that there are laws that can be utilized to encourage registration of citizenship. How do you think we can better utilize this law to like improve the success rate of like registering stateless individuals? If
I
that's
think,
possible.
it's definitely, first of all, I think we are not a very litigious country. Yeah. We don't take matters to court so much. But if the more of these cases go to court, then there is more avenue for debate and discussion and changes and interpretation, sort of like a liberal interpretation of the law, right? So at the moment, there aren't very many cases that actually end up in court. It stops at, appealing at maybe the National Registration Department, or, it stops there. It doesn't go further than that, because you're looking at the community as well. The community doesn't have the resources to do this, to take the matter to court. Sometimes it's not everybody who can afford to take the matter all the way up to court, so people don't even try. So in that sense, there's not enough litigation in this area, right? So then it's difficult to utilize these provisions. Okay. There isn't enough perhaps lobbying for the utilization of this provision,
Right.
Specifically because there isn't enough perhaps awareness. It's quite difficult. When I first did my PhD, and this was like when I first started, this was like 10 years ago or so, 12 years ago. At that point of time, the term statelessness itself was not known. It was just not known. Nobody even heard of it. You know what I mean? And that was only 12 years ago, Whereas statelessness was an issue that arose, like 60 over years ago, even more than that. But we only sort of became accustomed to this term about, say, 10 years ago, say, So it's still very new in our country. And the beauty of it is that even though it's a new concept, it's a new understanding, it's still used quite effectively. It's still being used. NGOs use the term statelessness quite liberally, right? So there is a bit more of an acknowledgement of the fact that you have stateless persons in this country. Because there can be persons who say that, no, Malaysia doesn't have stateless people in it. You also have that view. Malaysia doesn't have stateless. If they are not from this country, they're from somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Right.
But there are a lot of people that fall through the gaps, So that is sometimes not acknowledged.
Right.
So greater litigation, greater discussion, greater awareness will allow for the laws to be utilized in a more sort of effective manner for the individual.
Right.
I would,
Right. Yeah, definitely. I definitely find it quite heartbreaking that statelessness doesn't just affect international citizens, I guess, but it also affects like individuals who've lived in Malaysia all of their lives, who consider themselves as Malaysians, but like the country doesn't see them as that, and that's quite sad. But hopefully we're working
that's
towards.
very,
Yeah.
very sad. It's very sad. I would think that it's such a hard life, right? So, but hopefully, you see, the thing about Malaysia is, I think, the people generally, we Malaysians generally are very helpful and kind, and and do think about these things. We are not so blasé about it. We do think about these things, which is good. This is like, for example, this opportunity to discuss this area, and I'm sure that if you have friends who are stateless, I'm sure that you will do your best to help the person out. Maybe think about ways in which, the person can somehow acquire citizenship. I'm sure there are ways, and Malaysians are quite thoughtful in that sense. So we have to be positive, though. I think
Yeah.
that for the better. It's just baby steps, but
Yes.
it's changes are always there taking place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you so much, Dr. Tamara. All right, so at this point, we would like to share Miss Mashita's story on her experience on statelessness. So just to note, this video is actually in the Bahasa Malaysia. So for those of y'all who are not quite familiar with the language, we will be posting a transcript of it a bit later on our blog lah. But for now, just sit back and watch the video. And after that, we'll be proceeding to our Q&A session. Okay.
Dan salam sejahtera, saya Masyitah binti Abdul Halim. Saya mengajar di sebuah sekolah alternatif untuk anak-anak tanpa dokumen, mualaf dan juga anak-anak keciciran sekolah. Saya telah mengajar selama 5 tahun. Kini saya, suami dan 5 orang anak kami menetap di Sabah. Salah seorang anak saya stateless, manakala yang lainnya semua adalah warga negara Malaysia. Jadi kisah saya bermula begini. Pada tahun 2019, kami telah buat keputusan untuk pergi ke Turki selama setahun. Sebab suami saya telah tidak bertemu dengan keluarganya selama 10 tahun akibat situasi perang yang berlaku di Syria. Sebelum pergi, saya telah pergi ke JPN KK dan Immigration dan saya telah telefon JPN K-Line. Saya bertanya adakah anak saya boleh dapat kerakyatan Malaysia sekiranya lahir di luar negara. Saya diberitahu boleh, tapi tak dikatakan bahawa bukan automatik. Jadi setelah pergi, saya melahirkan anak, saya telefon kedutaan Malaysia di Ankara. Pegawai tersebut memberitahu saya bahawa anak saya tak layak untuk dapat pasport Malaysia dan hanya boleh buat permohonan warga negara. Jadi saya terduduk masa tu, terkejut dengan jawapan maklumat tersebut. Jadi apa pilihan yang ada? Tak pernah kami terfikir untuk mohon Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Saya Masyitah binti Abdul Halim.
Hi, apologies everyone. There appears to be just a bit of a technical difficulty. We're so sorry. Oh. Oh dear. Okay. Hi everyone. So sorry. There appears to be a technical difficulty. We have to stop sharing the video, but we will share it on our YouTube channel if that is okay with you guys. But I believe Miss Mashita is actually she's watching in the audience right now. So perhaps if we could invite her to maybe join the panel, then we could ask her questions about just to familiarize with her story, if that's okay. Let me just see if she is available. Hi, Mashita. Can you hear us? Okay. I think she might still be. Oh, hello, hello, hi. Oh dear, I think there is something up with your mic. Mashita, are you able to maybe say hi to the audience? Oops. Mashita, can you hear us? I'm not muted, right? Oh, okay. Okay, I think. All right. No worries. I think in the meantime we'll. Hi, Mashita. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll try and hopefully your audio will get set up soon. But I think we can go ahead and start with the Q&A session, if that's okay with you, Dr. Tamara. So sorry for the technical difficulties. This is our first time running a StreamYard, so I think stuff happens, but it's okay. We will steam on. No, carry on. Yeah. All right. So, Dr. Tamara, maybe you can. We have a question from the audience, and one of the questions is, why do you think there are cases of statelessness in Sabah? Is it because these individuals stay in remote areas so registration is hard? Is it because of young marriage? What do you think contributes to statelessness? Yeah, in Sabah, why there's so many cases, basically. Yeah.
Well, there are so many different issues actually that arise. Sabah, the locality itself, is such that you have had in the past Philippine refugees who have come in, and gotten documentation in the form of IMM 13 documents. So they stay on in Sabah, but then the trouble with the IMM 13 document is that it's a yearly renewable sort of document, and the children sometimes end up without documentation. Okay, so you have that community of Filipino once refugees in Sabah. You also have the Bajau Laut, Sama di Laut, who are, well, they are nomadic in that sense. They live in the sea. And because they live at the sea in between Philippines and Sabah, so you also have a problem of documentation. Which country do they belong to, Philippines or Sabah, or Malaysia? So Sabah does not acknowledge them as local Malaysians. So you have the Bajau Laut as well, who are basically stateless as well. So you have these communities who have come to the country or who live nearby in the periphery of the in the sea, who are basically without the relevant documents to give them citizenship. There's no citizenship. And then you also have all the other persons who are migrants. They are all those who have come from other countries and are now living in Malaysia, ex situ stateless. They come from outside and they're living. And then you have also in situ stateless, those who have always been in Sabah. And then, but unfortunately, because like you said, logistics, they never went out to register the births of the children, too far away, too remote, too costly. Sometimes it takes a lot of money to travel from one place to go to the registration department to register. A lot of money is involved, and they don't have the money for this. If they have so many children, how are they going to do this? So it's sort of not very practical sometimes. So you have all these different causes or barriers to registration. And then when you have these barriers to registration, then that leads to statelessness, So Sabah is is even more complex than Peninsular Malaysia. Peninsular Malaysia, we know that, these are the few categories and that's about it. But Sabah, you have so many different issues that arise, because of the historical factors, geographical factors as well, right? So yeah, there's lots of cases. There are different, varied cases. You cannot have one size fits all, one shoe fits all. Cannot. It's different. You have to address each community differently.
Right. I see. All right. Thank you for answering that question. I think, hi, Miss Mashita. Is everything okay? Are you able to hear me? Oh,
I
maybe you can try
I totally understand this thing because my students are from this group of people. So from the local from Kadazan, they are also some of them said. This is because of the geography, the vastness of the state, and the cost is really high. During this COVID, I heard that can reach up to 600 ringgit to go out from their own place, like Pensiangan, and most places is deeper. So one of our volunteers came here. Now he is here in our complex. So he told me this thing. Like, how people can go out? They are so poor. They are just farmers. So their children is like several months' income to go out from their village. So for my students, or many of them, they are from the Bajau community. So they are their parents, the children if they were born in the hospital, if they are lucky to go to the hospital, they had the birth certificate, bukan warga negara. And other side, when the mother married, when the mother married to the non-worker, or to serve as settlement man, and she thought that she couldn't register the son. So I have also this thing. She said that she cannot register the son because she didn't so we have like several students, at least 2-3 students. So she's stateless because of the ignorance. Actually, you can just register your child to get the birth certificate, and you can even get citizenship because the mother is the citizen. So last time I attended a meeting with
Hi, Miss Mashita.
group of NGOs.
Sorry.
About this thing, like they have categories of stateless. The situation in Sabah is unique, and of course I can it's just my experience. I don't really need too much.
Hi, Miss Mashita. So sorry, yeah. Puan Mashita, so sorry. I had to mute your mic for a bit, if that's okay, because I think there are some issues with your mic that's not really allowing us to hear what you're saying. So sorry about that. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Sorry, yeah. We're so sorry because we can't really hear you right now. So what we will do is we will still post your video on our Instagram and allow you to be heard. And I'll continue to be in contact with Family Frontiers on other ways that we can share your story, if that's okay.
Maybe we
We're
can
so-
try again, Faith. Maybe she can
Oh.
try the mic again. Just maybe. You want to try
Yeah.
again, Mashita, if you don't mind? Are you able to unmute and try again? Now she's muted. Something that
Oh dear. I think it's time to get your kids to get you a new mic. Oh dear. So sorry for the technical difficulties. I think we'll share your video lah, because you shared that with us already. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming on board. You can continue to stay on the stream, and then whatever Dr. Tamara say, you can nod along if you agree with it lah. Yeah. Okay.
And I can sort of understand. I couldn't really follow everything that you were saying, but I can resonate. I resonate with the fact that there are so many Malaysians. They are Malaysians. There's no doubt about it. Who are unfortunately without the citizenship, right? So that is the problem that your child faces. Malaysian stateless, right? They're not foreign stateless. Malaysian. So many cases like that in this country.
Quite a lot. They are actually Malaysian. The parents, the father is Malaysian. So as in my case, my video, they will show you my video just now, the blog, so you put on their blog later. So what happened to me was me and my husband, we lived in Sabah, okay, but then my husband has been 10 years didn't see his family. We decided to go to Turkey for 1 year to meet his family, extended families. Some of them become some they get citizenship there, which is they are so thankful for that, because it's not easy to be refugees, in France. But long challenges, more than even get a citizenship, right? So when we went there, I was pregnant, but before I asked him, I went to I called him and I asked whether my child should get citizenship if I go overseas. And this question arose because my sister, who was married to a Malaysian, was Malaysian, but their children had a problem because their children were deported. So their problem later is to get the birth certificate. So I was looking in foreign citizens, I went to they must be something. But then they said it's okay. They said okay, you can get citizenship, but they didn't say it's automatic. They didn't say it's automatic. So I said okay, since it's good, we can get citizenship. So we proceed. Then after delivery, I called the Malaysian embassy and asked about this, like when can we get appointment, like so confident. Then he said, then I explained that my husband is here, and he said, oh, you cannot passport for your son. You can only make the citizenship application. I was so surprised. After that, all came, after the shock, there was sadness, and I feel like I was discriminated by my own country. And they said in the constitution itself, like, you cannot get citizenship for your child. Then after that, I called again. I asked, can I bring my son to? How can I bring him back to Malaysia? Then it's called SEC. He is the emergency document for Malaysian. But my son is not Malaysian, so he cannot get that. The officer said. So how to bring my son back to Malaysia? We plan to take the Syrian citizenship, and also there were difficulties at that time for my husband to take the citizenship for my son. At that time we were connected to this Dina for 75 years. Then it's just been family frontiers, and my mother they went to they went at the time. So they were
All right. So sorry, Mashita. We had to just mute your mic for a second there because it's
They
really
were
hard
they
to
were
hear
lobbying
your.
to sign that to get the SPC. So we eventually we got the SPC, but with so much difficulty getting back to Malaysia, making all this work is only to bring my son back to Malaysia, not citizenship. So until now, it has been two and a half years. I'm still stateless, and I still I knew another woman who's in the same same category yet. For her daughter, the daughter was stateless until she was 6 years old. Eventually, she took her citizenship because her husband was granted a citizenship from Turkey later. So I was happy for her. At least the daughter is not stateless anymore. We can stay together. And for me, I'm happy because my family stay together. It's just that being stateless is difficult. My son, he was sick and he has asthma. He was admitted to hospital, so the cost is high. And we also have concern for we have concern for education and for traveling, how it will be, and what if one of us, pass away, what will happen? So this is some of the challenges. And I really hope that there will be change in near future for not just stateless children, but also for those who really want Malaysian citizenship for the future.
Hi, Mashita. Really sorry. I think we have to stop you there. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I tried my very best to hear like every word, but it's a bit hard because your mic is. Oh, sorry. Yeah, because your mic is it's not working very well. But yeah, I think we're thankful that towards Family Frontiers as well for reaching out to you and to getting your story heard. Yeah, Dr. T, is there anything you might like to add or anything you'd like to anything you'd like to add to that?
You can see how much of trouble it was just to get the child back to
Mm,
Malaysia, child's
yeah.
home. How much of
Yeah.
trouble. I could hear that little bit about that, and I
Yeah.
can understand how difficult it is. But the good thing is that there are NGOs, there are communities that are trying their best, working together and trying to at least there's some kind of visibility of this issue. The more NGOs and the more communities sort of get together and speak of these things and are aware of these things, greater visibility, then there is that sort of puts pressure for change.
Mm,
So
yeah.
so it's a start, which is a good thing. But yeah, I wish your son, isn't it, boy or girl? Boy, right? Boy. two
Mm.
years old now. 2 years old or 2 years old. Wish him all the best. I hope he soon. So
Mm.
um, anyway, Mashita, you're from Sabah. Yeah, from Sabah.
I'm from Sabah.
Sabah. Nice
Oh,
meeting
you're
you.
nice meeting you. Yeah. Yeah, we see you and we hear you, and we're so grateful that that for your bravery to share your story with us. Yeah, um, yeah, people like Dr. Tamara are working very hard to make sure that your children can have like a better future in Malaysia. Yeah, no pressure, Dr. Tamara. Yeah, no pressure at all.
Quite
Okay,
stressful. Well, I
yeah,
do research in the area. Hopefully, at some point, the research will be fruitful.
yeah,
Yeah, hopefully.
yeah. All right. Um, let me see if okay. So I think we'll just take like one more question if that's okay with you, because I understand that you need to leave soon. What are so like I think a common sentiment is that gender discrimination in citizenship law has led to statelessness also, and politicians are working to support for fair citizenship laws, but the reactions have been rather slow. What do you think can be done to speed up this process, in your opinion? Yeah.
Well, a lot more is known and being done now, right? Compared to maybe 5 years ago. Okay, so this awareness that the law itself is actually it's not fair, it's not balanced in terms of the genders, especially if you look at Mashita's situation, where if she goes overseas, her child does not get citizenship from her, but from her husband. So that the law itself is there should be some amendment made. The trouble, of course, is that this is the federal constitution we are talking about, right? And to amend the federal constitution, it is not easy, especially at this point of time when we have a slim majority government. We don't even have a 2/3 majority government. So it's even more difficult to make this change. But if all parties can see the benefit of making this change, to the constitution, that is what we hope for, because this is not something which one party would necessarily lobby and another would not. I think this one is something that parties, members of parliament, can agree on regardless of their party affiliation. I think this is one thing that they can agree on, because it's obvious that the law was made at that point of time where it worked, but now maybe it does not. So many women go overseas to work and have their children overseas now. It's not like before. So this is something that needs to be looked into. And I'm sure that this is something that can be, regardless of your political affiliation, right? Can be looked into. Just like vote 18 above to vote in the next elections. That was done, even though we didn't have the 2/3 majority. So that, the possibility is there, right? So, but the thing is, maybe more visibility, more people talking about it, more understanding of the concept, more understanding of the people involved, put ourselves in the shoe of the child, and sort of realize that, this is not something that should happen to anyone. So I think just greater visibility, greater awareness, that's what we can do on our part. And also leave it to the lawyers, of course, take the matter to court. Well, Faith, you'll be one of them. Take it to court.
I hope so.
Argue properly, in the way that will benefit the children at the end of the day, right? And those who are working, NGOs are doing a lot of good work as well. NGOs are marvelous, they're doing a lot of good work in this country. I'm so amazed with the proliferation of NGOs over the years. In this 10 years, I've seen so many new NGOs that are doing so much for stateless, different stateless communities. There are. So that's really good, right? So we have the resources, just that a little bit more visibility, a little bit more push. I think eventually we'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's a wonderful wrap up of how there is hope, how the law will develop if we put our backs into it. So yeah, do follow everyone. If you're still watching, thank you so much for staying till the end. Do follow Family Frontiers on their social media platforms. They do work on gender inequality, citizenship, and that also touches on issues like statelessness as well. And we definitely have had the privilege of getting in contact with Mashita here to share her story, even though there were some technical difficulties. But we will be sharing that on our Instagram page. So do follow us. Our Instagram is in the description box below, so you can check it out and you can check out her story there. But besides that, thank you so much, Dr. Tamara and Puan Mashita, for joining us this evening, for making time despite the few bumps in the road. I think I really do hope our audience here has picked up a thing or two. Yeah, and I hope this was fun for you as well.
Definitely. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for organizing this event and giving me this privilege of being here. Yeah. And thanks,
course.
Mashita. Also, nice to know about you and your story as well. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to share the story and for others that the children. We hope there is a better future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. And so I think we can wrap it up. We can call it a night. Thank you everyone for joining us and I hope you picked up a thing or two. We will be having another webinar on the 27th of October. We'll be talking to a few politicians and representatives from Family Frontiers about the recent legal developments in on the issue relating to on issues relating to statelessness and why there seems to be a bit of a lag policy-wise. So do catch us for that. You can follow our Instagram for further updates. But for now, have a wonderful night and stay safe and healthy, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.